Here we are again. Today we're going to talk about radio, and I'm sure some of you thought, "Why radio?" I mean, isn't that sort of fading into our memory as a presence in America? And the radio we used to know, in fact, is. In fact, I have a little prop for you right now. There it is. I was going through some boxes the other day from my childhood days and found this lovely little uh, transistor radio, an AM radio. I was so thrilled to see it and thought, I wonder if this thing works. Um, so I took out the decades old battery from it and put in a new battery, and sure enough, it worked. I was so thrilled. And then I turned it on and I searched the dial. And I'm going to give you, I'm give you a chance to guess what was on the radio as I went back and forth across the dial. You guess. Go ahead. If you guessed Rush Limbaugh, you were right. In fact, I found three programs on the radio dial up here in northern Colorado. I found Rush Limbaugh, Rush Limbaugh, and Rush Limbaugh. Yeah. Well, now Rush may be one of your favorites. That's good for you. The point about that discovery has a lot to do with what we're going to talk about today. As you see, the title our discussion is from narrowcasting to broadcasting and back. What do we mean? Well, simple as that. When when this technology was new, radio was about narrowcasting. It was about interpersonal communications, sort of the ham radio operators, um, the crystal sets. It wasn't about networks. It wasn't about programming for people. Well, that changed um, in many in dramatic ways. Now, as you notice from our assignments this week, I'm not asking you to read the whole chapter about radio. I think some of it's a little bit maybe not something that everybody needs to know about, but it is interesting. I'll point out certainly point to one area in the book that's I think fascinating related to radio, um, the government, the role of government in it. Um, it talks about the two people who were sort of vying to be the person who invented radio or who developed it to where it became a national presence, institution, and those would be DeForest and Marconi. The discussions are in the earlier part of the chapter. You're more than welcome to take a look at them. Uh, on page 161, it talks about a sort of a fascinating little um, showdown between those two individuals at a yachting race in which both were going to broadcast the results of the race and tell the results before couriers could get it to the finish line or whatever, and they did. The only problem was that both of them were on the same frequency, didn't know that at all, and they ended up their signals ended up interfering with each other, and nobody could hear them. Therefore, they introduced themselves and the nation to the issue that was going to be part of radio's future, which was the issue of conflicting frequencies and signals that were going to clash. And from that emerged the role of the federal government, first in the form of the Federal Radio Commission, and then in the form of the Federal Communications Commission. I think that was in 1938. Um, but there were some very important developments related to radio. Now, remember, we started out with narrowcasting, which was person to person, and then we ultimately radio changed to a broadcasting, Now, as radio was becoming so popular, and uh, we the federal government had to come up with some means of regulating um, these communications, and the Radio Act of 1912 um, did that in terms of uh, having to assign frequencies to all these radio users so that signals did not clash. And it's a fascinating reference on page 162 of treating airwaves as a natural resource, meaning sort of like a river or actually air, uh, uh, all of which are finite in terms of keeping them pristine. So they treated uh, radio waves or airwaves in similar fashion. You had to apportion certain parts of it so that there was not a not clashing signals. So the radio certainly became you know, the entertainment forum for Americans and many across the world in those early years. And as the book points out, the one of the issues that always faced the federal government was how to apportion um, frequencies for such things as public radio. And in 1967, you had a Congress that was very amenable to um, programs that had a sort of a broad general interest, and we created public broadcasting, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a very important event when this happened. And the fact is that we think of how uh, radio stations have in many ways struggled over the years, but public broadcasting, the radio, and particularly the radio component, has really thrived and continues to be an amazing presence um, on the air. Um, the When we're talking about going from narrowcasting to broadcasting and back, well, a few things have happened in the last 20 years that are very much pertinent to what's happened um, with radio. And the most important is the Telecommunications Act of 1996. Now, in 1996, you had a Congress that was controlled by the Republican Party, very amenable to business and very amenable to competition, deregulation. People who have tracked the whole issue of deregulation through the years have come to understand that one thing that comes with deregulation is consolidation, the big fish eating the little ones. And that's exactly what happened with the Telecommunications Act of 1996. It brought consolidation. Um, Probably the biggest offshoot of um, that piece of legislation was that some major media companies started gobbling up radio stations. The biggest of them all is Clear Channel. Um, One of them is CBS Radio, and but nothing compares to Cumulus is another one, but nothing compares to Clear Channel and how it's acquired so many radio stations. And your book talks about this. I want you to. You cannot understand issues with radio if you do not understand, if you don't know about Clear Channel. Um, the On page 189, the very back, it's discussed democracy and radio, and the book points out that it's very true that deregulation has moved the radio away from um, what used to be a very local presence with its news coverage and weather and all that. And when a major corporation like Clear Channel takes over and it has its own programming, it provides its own programming. It often downsizes its workforce. Among the things that go away are news gathering organizations, up to the minute weather. Um, I think anybody who now relies on radio to provide up to the minute weather reports, for instance, if there's a tornado nearby or something, good luck. Good luck. Um, you'll hear these stations that are run by the major conglomerates. They'll just be cranking away as if nothing else was going outside the station. I mean, the town could be burning down, and they'll just be playing their, their golden oldies hits or their true country um, favorites. Now this is a generalization, I understand, but it is happening way too often. In that when downsizing takes place, you're going to see a lot of things that were locally oriented are removed. Now, back to that transistor radio and AM. Anybody who pays attention to radio in the 21st century knows that the AM dial has changed dramatically, and one of the biggest reasons for its change is talk radio. Partially because talk radio doesn't require the same sort of sound quality that a music station does. So, and I want you're going to be reading your book about the birth of talk radio. You cannot um, downplay the role of talk radio in American events in the last 25 years. Um, and what's interesting is that now, not only in the form of talk radio, but with such things as Pandora and means internet radio and other forms, we really have come all the way around back to narrowcasting. Talk radio is narrowcasting. It's for a narrowly defined audience. So of course is Pandora. So are the various stations that are satellite run. You choose what you want to listen to. And Clear Channel has something called iHeartRadio, which fits into that whole mode. You choose. It doesn't matter where it is in the world. It's basically you're choosing the music that you want to listen to, and it's not for a general audience. So there we are. Whether or not it's good or bad or whatever, that my AM radio basically has no function, and in my life, it's reality. It's the way the media has moved. It's the way of the world. But because of the internet, because of such things as Pandora and iHeartRadio, uh, the radio is far from becoming an obsolete creature. It is very much part of our existence, and that is what we need to know about radio. So read about it and understand that it's changing with the times, just like all the others. Right? We'll talk to you again soon.